Strawberry kiwi. Yeah, they fucking nailed it. I'm gonna give that a fucking 8/8.
Right on.
Yeah.
Is it the new favorite?
It's gonna be up there, man. I think it's definitely top 3. But the other thing too is like as flavors get older and I like have them lots.
Yeah.
They're not as good. Like when black cherry came out, I was like, this is money. And now I'm like,
I drank a million too many of these.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this is good. All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to today's video. We're hitting some legs, and I want to go over some underrated tips to grow, or underrated movements, tips, strategies to grow big legs. Last video we did was overrated chest movements, and I think chest in general obviously is going to be full of overrated bullshit because everyone loves training chest. The bros love training chest, so they're going to come up with some bullshit because they're fucking idiots. But legs, the bros hate training legs. So legs has a lot of underrated training strategies. So we're gonna go over those today. And if you guys haven't watched the previous video on overrated chest movements, go watch that. And then if you're interested in learning about practical and actually like logic-based, not bullshit bro science, lifting advice, you know, fitness just in general, nutrition, all that kind of stuff, sub the channel. I would very much appreciate it. Ow, fuck. Give me that.
Get warmed up, boy.
I already,
get warmed up, boy.
We're even now.
Get warmed up, boy.
Give it. Give it. Oh, fuck. My nipples are hard now.
Oh, yeah! You wanna find it?
All right, so this next tip is one that you guys probably don't want to hear, but just hear me out. Training calves first in the session. Super underrated tip. Not from me, because obviously if you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I say that all the time, but training calves sucks. So doing it at the beginning of the session when you have more energy, more enthusiasm, makes it better. You're gonna be way more effective with your calf training. Don't take it from me. I'm obviously don't have huge calves, although all the people who have huge calves are the same people who say they never do anything for their calves. So that obviously means nothing, calf size. But doing it first in the session will make it way more effective because you're gonna be able to recruit more motor units due to no CNS fatigue, because as you go further into a session and do more exercises, you're gonna create CNS fatigue, which is gonna reduce basically the potency of exercises done later in the session. And it's going to improve your ankle mobility and get blood through your ankles and to an extent your knees, because the calf muscle does cross the knee for your subsequent movements. So if you have shit ankle mobility and you have shit calves, do calves at the beginning of the session because, like I said, more fun, way better calf pump. You're not gonna be tired throughout the rest of your legs. You're gonna be able to stabilize better, and you're gonna create a stronger growth stimulus. And then when you go into your subsequent movements, like today I have some squat pattern stuff where I'm gonna be trying to do knees over toes kind of thing. I'm gonna be able to do it better because I've trained my gastroc and ankle muscles through their end ranges. So I'm gonna basically have access to that end range come time that I do my squat pattern and I want to move into that end range. So just trust me, your calves will grow. They're not like some special muscle that doesn't grow when they're trained, but every other muscle does. Like, they will grow, just train them hard, 2 sets to failure, maybe do a little drop set in your second set or something like that, just because I'm inclined to think that most people probably aren't gonna train their calves that hard, and trust me, they will grow.
good girl PR, sir.
What?
That's a good girl PR.
I think it is, yeah. Okay, so the first underrated leg tip I have for you guys is to do your good girls. The adducting machine is super underrated. Nobody ever trains their adductors. A lot of dudes are like, oh, that's a girl machine. And a lot of like just people in general, they might not know that they might not think it's a girl machine, but which it's not. But they might just be like, I don't know what that's for. You know, I already do like squats and stuff for like my legs. Like, why would I do that? So I remember for the first couple years I was in the gym, I never fucking touched this thing. That being said, most people are in that boat. So if you start training with this thing and you haven't before, you're gonna see some like noob gains basically, because those muscles have never been trained in this way. So the adaptations are gonna happen like very quickly because it's such a novel stimulus. So, and the other thing too that people don't understand about adductors is adductors are a big muscle group. They're gonna add a lot of size to your legs. They're gonna increase the width of your legs, like from side to side, looking like from the front and from the back. So if you're not training this, throw that into your program. It will blow your legs up in that area very quickly, especially if you haven't been doing it for a long time. And it's also just a fantastic prep movement. Since I started doing these, all of my squat and hinge patterns feel better, feel stronger. Your adductors, for example, are the primary mover in the bottom of a squat. So if you feel kind of weak in the bottom of a squat sometimes, training your adductors directly, increasing obviously their size and strength, is gonna help you with stability and power in the whole of a squat. The adductors, obviously you're not training hip extension with this machine, but the adductors perform hip extension. So when you're in deep hip flexion, meaning like very, very bent at the hips, your adductors are what is going to be honestly the prime mover in that position, if not one of the prime movers. So doing some work for them, some isolation work, is just gonna help you carry over. It's gonna carry over into your other like main lifts as well. So I think they're really underrated, and it'll improve your mobility as well, improve your femoral rotation, internal rotation, which I'm not gonna get into that, but that's important. And yeah, they're just, trust me, throw them into your workout. You guys see me do them on my leg days. I always do them as like a first or second exercise. It's a hypertrophy movement, but also a prep movement. So next little tip for you guys, and I mentioned this before on my Instagram page, but train hamstrings first in the session. So today is my quad focus leg day, so you know most of the movements are going to be quad stuff, but I'm still training hamstrings first. I'm only doing one exercise for hamstrings today, and it's a seated ham curl. And doing a hamstring curl before you go into a quad movement is A, going to warm your knees up, so you might not have to do a bunch of knee prep bullshit if you're already done just hamstring curls. And B, a lot of people's hamstrings are lacking because you can't see them. They're not a very like fun muscle to train necessarily. So just doing those first, getting them kind of out of the way, and then also using them kind of similar to the adductor and calves as I've already done as a prep movement will help you, A, to create a better growth stimulus in your hamstrings that you're probably not going to create unless you make a point of doing them early in the session. And B, you're going to be better off, you know, more comfortable in your subsequent quad movement. So it's kind of a win-win. I'm a big fan of seated hamstring curls before quad movements. On my other hamstring day, I do RDLs first, which is a hamstring movement, but that's a little bit of a different reason. So I'm not saying do RDLs before your quad stuff, but I am saying do hamstring curls before your quad stuff. It doesn't have to be seated. It can be lying as well, but just doing hamstring curls before quad stuff is, I think, very underrated. The only other person I've heard talk about this, or at least the first person I've heard talk about this, was John Meadows, rest in peace to a legend, and hypertrophy coach Joe Bennett. Obviously lots of other people, like my current coach Nick Gloff is a proponent of it as well, but yeah, it's not, especially in like the Gen Pop crowd, like the bros and like younger generation, people, I don't see a lot of people talking about it, so I think it's a very underrated and important thing to consider. hear me fart?
No.
So the last tip, underrated leg growing tips is get a pair of lifting shoes. Obviously that's not, you know, imperative or necessary, but I do think a lot of people struggle to, first of all, a lot of people have shit ankle mobility, and a lot of people struggle to really leverage their quads in squat pattern movements. You'll see a lot of people on hack squats, for example, they'll go down too low and their feet will be too high up to the top of the platform, and they leverage a lot of adductor and glute to get out of the hole, and that's just really not going to do a lot for your quads, at least in comparison to having your feet lower and getting your knees further over your toes. And that goes for all squat patterns. And I think lifting shoes, you don't have to get expensive ones. You can get, you know, I think there's like $100 Adidas Addy Powers, and those ones have same heel lift. They're gonna get the job done for sure. Like, you don't have to buy expensive ones, but they are gonna help you get a little bit more of your squat patterns, and they are actually going to improve, sorry, YoungLA drop, I got a pose for it. They are actually going to improve your ankle mobility over time because they're going to facilitate your knee going further over your toes and getting further into that dorsiflexion like ankle range of motion. So they're going to improve they're going to immediately improve your ankle mobility because there's a little bit of a heel lift, but then they're going to sustainably improve your ankle mobility over time as well. And they're going to help you get more of your squat patterns. And we know that quads grow, at least for a short period of time, from being trained at longer lengths, and you're always going to grow your quads more if you're leveraging them more within your squat patterns over your hip musculature, for example. So I do think lifting shoes, although not necessary for everybody, are definitely something worth looking into. Cut the snap. Cut the snap. Good?
Yep.
All right, so another little bonus tip for those of you who are sticking around to the end of the video. I like you guys, respect. Another little bonus tip is for the leg extension. If you have a shitty leg extension like this one, where like you can't, it doesn't bend your knee very far, grab a little pad, a little padaroonie, a little padamino, padadino, and do this with it. Very complex. You sit on the leg extension, and then you put it there, and it gives you a little bit more range of motion. Obviously, if you can think of, you can use a bigger pad, like something that's a little thicker than this. That would be better, but this will do the job. It's essentially just adding a little bit more range of motion, and specifically for the rec fem. So rec fem crosses the knee joint and the hip joint. So the leg extension is really the only movement that trains the rec fem other than a sissy squat, because all the other squat pattern movements, your knee is going to straighten while your hips also straighten, which basically just means that the muscle's going to shorten at the knee and lengthen at the hip, and then lengthen at the hip and shorten at the knee. Wait, am I saying that right? Shorten at the knee, lengthen at the hip, and then shorten at the hip, lengthen at the knee. Basically that means that for that rec fem, which is a little head of the quad that crosses knee and hip, it's not going to be changing length at all, so it doesn't really get trained with squat pattern movements. It only gets trained with like leg extension and sissy squat. So we know that, like I said earlier, quads benefit from stretch-mediated hypertrophy, so they're going to grow a little bit more from being trained at longer lengths. So if you can do a leg extension with a little bit more range of motion, you're going to get more gains specifically for the rec fem. So it's just a little bonus tip. It's going to make a fucking huge difference, bro. Huge. Like unnatty gains difference. I'm kidding, but it's worth trying.